Why do you
Okay.
think there's such a disconnect between those who attend church and the type of relationships that they get?
Well, I think right now it's not even a disconnect. I think the same type of person who's dating in the church is dating in the world. There's no change. And the church is supposed to be a hospital where people are getting better. Sick people get well. You go into the hospital, you want to come out better than when you went in. And the church is supposed to be the same way. I mean, the call for the church is to call the lost, the broken, the downtrodden. That's who's dating. I mean, the people who are dating right now are coming into a relationship broken, but unlike in the church, they don't have the benefit of having the Holy Spirit and having Jesus in order to help guide them, direct them, and lead them into truth and into righteousness. But I think the biggest disconnect is those people are coming into the church now looking for a relationship outcome, and they're not doing the work or committing themselves to the teachings.
So you think that they're still viewing dating within the church like how they would date out in the world. There hasn't been any changes in their personal life.
No, and I talk about that in my book series. I say all the time that you're dating in a modern world. There's no way that you're going to be able to make it a traditional world anymore because things have gone so far down the path that you got to stay in it. So no, no one is changing to or adapting to conform to the teachings of the church and the expectations within the church.
So what do you think then needs to happen on an individual level to get better outcomes for dating?
I tell people all the time to do the work. So if you're a Christian or not, and you've had 5 years of bad dating outcomes, it's a you problem. So let's take the next 6 months. Let's get off the dating apps. Let's get off social media. Let's get off of Netflix. Let's read 6 books, and we can provide you a list of 6 great books. Get involved with a local community group, a church, a mosque, a a local like a YMCA, which was what we have in the states, or a community organization or an alumni association, so you can begin to connect with like-minded individuals, and then just start working on yourself. Because the reason you've had 5 years of bad dating outcomes is because you are the constant, you are the problem. There's something about you or something that you're putting out as an expectation or how you're meeting needs that's turning off the market. And it ain't your body for the ladies. It ain't your hair. It ain't your eyelashes. It ain't your makeup. It ain't your dresses. It ain't your car. It ain't your education. It ain't in your career. None of that stuff matters. Fellas, if you try to lead with your wallet, you're going to get wallet outcomes. And those wallet outcomes means you're going to get gold diggers who only want you for resources. So make sure that you're building the character that we talk about in the book series of getting as close to high value as possible, getting close to the character, the community, getting the cash, and then getting the creativity and the creation out of legacy as a result.
I used to date, and I may have shared this with you. I used to date a girl years ago
Mm-hmm.
who she thought she had it all, right? Like she had everything, all the knowledge, all the wisdom, but yeah, she couldn't maintain relationship after relationship. But then when I got involved in her with her, went on a couple of dates. I was like, something is off. So when I started to ask certain questions, I was like, okay, I know why she is unable to have relationships because she went into it thinking I'm perfect. The problem is everybody else. And then I would ask her, I was like, okay, but people are leaving you. Who leaves perfection? Right? Like people would gravitate towards it. And you mentioned something where you said that women is not their body and men it's not your wallet. Why do you then think so many people lead with things that they probably have overestimated themselves, such as their body or such as their wallet?
It's funny you're talking about that because as of this recording, we're in the we're Palm Sunday going into Easter season. So Every church in North America right now is teaching about going to fish. Go fish, because ultimately, if you've never met a real Christian, ladies and gentlemen, a real Christian is supposed to give you a life that exemplifies the love that God had through his son, Jesus Christ. I should be inviting people to church. I should be inviting people to understand and have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what every church is trying to get, because it's not just about getting people in the building for 3 services, 6 services, 10 services over 3 days. It's about getting them connected to the Christ. But one thing that we're being taught is to not overestimate or overvalue yourself like some people do. If you overestimate or overvalue yourself, you don't make room for people, you don't make room for God, and you really don't make room for yourself. So when you have a higher value on yourself than you ought to, you start to look down on everyone else and you have a condescending tone. Take that back to dating. This is how men and women are showing up in the dating market, in church and out. They're showing up telling the world, I'm more valuable than what you believe or what you say that I am. I am worth this. I am worth having a car, a house, my bills paid for. I am worth 3 trips a year. I am worth having kids and having them in a private school. I am worth you taking care of my mama. When if you can't do that stuff yourself, or you're not identifying and meeting the needs of the person who has the resources to do it, what makes you think you're qualified for that?
And that is the question that a lot of people, I think, don't want to ask themselves is what makes you worthy of this person providing you with this type of lifestyle that you're looking to extract from them? I remember I saw an interview where this woman, she said that men out there, if you earn less than $50,000 a year, you shouldn't be dating. And I found it to be shocking. And then I sat back and I thought about it. I was like, okay, that's around the average income in Canada and the States, or a
In the
little bit
States, yep.
higher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. And then I was like, you know what? Depending on the type of person you're looking for, she may have a point, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're struggling and you want to go on all these dates because maybe one side would be that you necessarily can't afford these dates, or another side would be that, okay, maybe I should date regardless of my income level. What are your thoughts?
I actually agree with her. If anyone's come to me through this content or been to my channel, I always say that relationship outcomes are above or below the line. The line is manhood and womanhood. So the men who we say qualify for great relationship outcome are modern, traditional, high value. Less than 10% is high value of any man in any room. One man out of 10 in every room would qualify as high value. Traditional is harder to get because tradition speaks to this. She really wants a traditional man because traditional men make more than $50,000 a year. They can carry a household of 4 to 6, and they typically have a blue collar background, a high end, high skilled trade, or they own a business where they are the solopreneur or they're in a partnership. And so they expect their woman to take care of them, the kids, the home, and everything else in that order. And he will make sure that he does. He provides, he protects, he professes, he priests in the home. He's wise, he's industrious, he's fearless, he's elegant, and he gets a wife who is ring. She is reliable. Well, I'll just stop there, because if I keep going, everyone's going to fall out on their chair. Reliable, because because that's the first key. So I honestly agree and believe that $50,000, if that's the median income in the States, you need to be above that line because you can't afford to go on dates anyway. That's the first thing. Second, now, here's the thing: you may disqualify a lot of good men who have the character you need to be a great husband, a great father, because they're making 48. but they're going to be on their way, because if they're making 48 and they're in their late 20s, by the time they're 41, they're going to be at 148, 248. And that's the type of man you want. But you need to catch that type of man at $48,000 a year before he gets to the 248 in order to benefit from it. Now you got me going. There's this big misconception when you go above the line to men and women that every man started as high value, every man started as traditional, every man started as modern. That's not the case. It's a progression. Our archetypes are that we speak of in our books are a progression. And the best outcome that I can communicate to people who want one man, one woman, long-term relationship, marriage, children, legacy as a result, start as early as possible with one person, because that gives you a lifetime to build. But we're not doing that. We don't want to build with anyone anymore. In the church, out of the church, we want people coming ready made, like this a meal prep at the CrossFit gym, ready made. I warm it up and then I ingest it or I experience it, and then I go on about my day. But no one can sustain themselves on meal prep through at the gym all their life. You're eventually going to have to learn to go to the grocery store. You're going to eventually learn how to cook. You're going to eventually learn how to manage the budget. You're going to eventually learn how to prepare the meal, serve the meal, and then you're going to have to start serving a meal to larger groups. We never want to get there. My parents celebrated. My father just passed this as of this recording this past year. They were together 54 years. Now, I don't get credit for their 54 years. I've experienced 44 of those years, basically. But at the same time, that's their journey. My mother benefited from the work she invested early in my father as he went to college and he matriculated through General Motors and Delco Remy and became an executive. My father benefited by having a child. He wanted a son, he had me, and he provided a lifestyle for us that allowed my mother to pick and choose her career path. They would have never been able to do that had my mother said, I need somebody that's already making 50, or my father said, I need somebody that's already with zero body count, or somebody that is ready to submit to me. It don't work that way.
What do you think are then some of the obstacles that prevent people from identifying earlier on the potential in the person and that they have the ability to reach it to become the successful man as you described, the successful woman as you stated?
Well, what's lacking is guidance. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people who are out here who are lost and lost. So take it back to the church. The church is supposed to be teaching people who are lost how to get direction and how to find the way. So if you don't have the church, if you don't have your parents, if you don't have an uncle, auntie, or a grandmother, you literally have TV, movies, and social media teaching you how to get the outcome that you want professionally, spiritually, and in relationship or financially. So I think the thing that hinders people is the lack of option and the lack of guidance that they haven't received. That's why it's incumbent upon people and content creators that I follow, such as yourself, myself. We try to highlight other content creators that have positive messaging that come from good families. And we're not just holding it for ourselves. We're trying to teach the lessons to a new generation and even our own generation on how to get the best outcome. But by not having the mentorship, not having the investment of someone who's done it, it's impossible for most people to get the successful outcome, which is why, and I talk about in part two of the book, I tell men specifically, and I only speak to the men, to find a mentor. If you're 32 years old and you want to be a top executive at your company, find the guy who's 45 and who's been with the company for 22 years. Get to take him to coffee, take him, take him to lunch, take her to lunch, and then get to know them and learn their journey about how they were able to matriculate through the organization because you aspire to do that one day. It's the same thing with dating. Find someone at your church, find someone in your community group, find someone in your fraternity or sorority, and or find someone in your extended family and spend time with them and get to know their thoughts about the thing that you're struggling with, in this case, relationship.
From a perspective that I have when I speak to some of my male friends, and you and I have talked about this, is a lot of times their ego prevents them from asking people that type of information. So, for example, when I was in my 20s and I was struggling with dating and relationships, I know who to go to and the type of advice that I was seeking. As I became older and I see some other people hesitant or straight out refusing to go to those who are in healthy, successful marriages or relationship and asking them, to your point, for guidance or going to the mentors, they rather go to the strangers online who's going to be flashy about it, who's going to say that no, you need to go to the gym, which is true, right? You want to be fit, you want to be healthy. But what I
Nah,
see with a disconnect is that if you have someone that's next door to you that's been with their partner for 20, 30, 40 years, it's right there. The wisdom is right there, but you rather ignore that and then go online. And I see a lot of men fall into the trap of becoming, as they would say, like incels or toxic masculinity and things like that, because then they have a skewed perception of relationships because they think that, well, I'm told that she has to submit to me, but you're leaving out the other part. She has to submit when you've achieved certain status in your life, right? They're earning 20,000. They want the woman to do everything for them like they're high value. Why do you think men are struggling to understand that they need to put in work as well to make sure that the woman respects them as such?
well, women don't submit to men, wives submit to husbands, and they only submit as unto the Lord. This is the misconception about marriage. So if no one ever had a marriage and they weren't taught that, a Christian marriage has an order. The order is God, it's the man, it's the woman, it's the children. Why is that? Because God tells us in the book of Genesis that there is order because he created the world 6 days, rested on the seventh. He never contradicts himself. He's not a God of chaos. When you have that order, what ends up happening from a perfect standpoint, and I'll get to your point, if the kids are acting up, dad says something to mom. If the kids are acting up and doing things that are outside of the scope of day to day, God is using those kids to test mom. People don't like this teaching. And then if dad is acting up and he's not in right authority and alignment with God in a Christian marriage, it shows up in the wife and mom. So mom is struggling. You have a disconnect with mom. God is trying to teach you through that. I need you to get back in right relationship with me. Happens in my household. When I'm all out of sorts and things ain't going well, my wife starts giving me a little bit of hell. I get right back on my knees. I get right back in my word if I've missed it and get right back in the presence of God. And then things start realigning themselves. So we try to stay in that alignment. Now, I just gave free game, the game my dad would have given, the game his dad gave, the game that my other grandfather gave about how to keep your household as a Christian man in order. There's nothing else that you have to do. That has nothing to do with money. That has nothing to do with your body. That has nothing to do with your education. That has nothing to do with a fraternity or sorority or a car that you drive. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's about submitting yourself to that authority. Why men are having a hard time and why we're starting to see more men as incels, as you said, is because this is the natural evolution of the red pill movement online. When I wrote my books, the person who was popular as I was completing my books was rest in peace, Kevin Samuels. I sent that book to a lot of people and they said, man, this sounds just like him. I immediately redid the book because I didn't want to be confused with someone who what he was doing. Not to say that it was good or bad. I don't have an opinion either way. But looking at the content, I didn't want to get on the live at 11 p.m. every night Eastern Standard Time and just tell women that they're never going to get good outcomes. That's not what TMG is about. TMG is about getting people to understand modern dating and to get them to the point of being able to connect with one another and then move into long-term relationship, marriage, children, legacy as a result. Men aren't hearing that message, and that message doesn't resonate because they have no examples. The examples are only athletics, entertainment, a couple of billionaires and famous people who are all unhappy, by the way. That's what they see online. And then what people grab. If you and I wanted to make $1 million in the next month, we just start changing our content and we start talking about alpha this, be a man, don't be a simp, you're a beta, go out, work out, drink juice, no, drink water, eat protein. And our channels would blow up because unfortunately the society we live in and the social media algorithm promotes loneliness and discord. That is literally all it is. It is a device of the enemy. I often tell people, but it also can be a good thing for conversations like this, for the word of God, for business acumen, business advice. But a lot of men are turning to, because they're lonely. They've been on social media now from middle school to high school to college. Now they're adults. They started social media if they're in their 40s. They got social media in the 2000s. So they've been on social media for at least 20 years. We've lived with social media for 20 years. Just let that sink in. And just think about going from MySpace to what we have now with TikTok and the amount of messaging and imaging that is feeding your decided worldview based off of your viewing. It is only going to lead men who are lonely and are not getting relationship outcomes into the incel movement. Now, the incel movement, as I've talked about on a couple of podcasts and I talk about on TMG Reacts, it's a bad outcome for society because when you have men who are not aligned to something greater than themselves, and as a man, you align yourself with an organization or an ideology. If you're not, then you align yourself to a family. And then when you become the head of that family, you are responsible for that family. We have more men who are incels than men who are willing to be responsible for a family. And the reason they don't think that they can get what they believe the promise is because the people that they're listening to are giving them bad advice. And here's the thing behind all those channels that y'all see, Wolf Sheep and Wolf.com, all those people are happily married with women who are at home, submitting through the word of God, taking care of their 4 kids. They have a pool. They're on ATVs. They're shooting rifles off every other weekend. They're vacationing in Cabo while you are sitting there just consuming this that is changing your worldview. Meanwhile, to your point, you have a neighbor next door who's been married 40 years who needs help in his garden. Go help him in his garden and get to learn the life lesson from him. You have a young lady across the street who has 2 kids. Go watch her kids while she's at work or going to the store one day just for a couple of hours to get a different perspective. That's not happening. When you're lonely, the loneliness grows and you just kind of build your walls and you build your world around that. I've said that the best way to break through that is the church has to step up. Where's the church? I'm looking around and waiting. Sometimes I say, where's the church? When I see things happen on TV, um, the church is supposed to be going out. We're supposed to be outreaching to the world to bring in the lost. 82% of the unchurched would say yes to attending church if they were asked. That's a higher percentage than going to get donuts at Krispy Kreme or Tim Hortons. It's a higher percentage than people who would go vote. It's a higher percentage of who would go to a soccer match or a baseball game. But yet the church isn't doing the work that is necessary at a minimum. And then we have all of these other problems, including dating, that lead as the outcome.
I remember a time where the church was the shield to
Mm-hmm.
all of that, right? And now I see that, to your point, the loneliness and the online movement, they're a barrier to all the success that you can see. There's some people in my life where I've shown them happy marriages, successful
Hmm.
relationships, and they are resistant to it. Like even
Mm.
where you to show it to them, they're like, no, this is not true because online I saw this. And then I would ask them, I was like, before you consume this content, you must have seen the other side. When you go home, because many, to your point, right? Many of these men who are struggling, who don't have the protection of the church, when they log off online, they have both parents in the house.
Hmm.
So it's interesting to see that around them is healthy relationships. Next door to them is healthy relationships, but they will bypass all of that to log in online and, to your point, consume the misery, consume the
Hmm.
loneliness, right? And to further the point is, I think there's a growing number of men that are so deep in it that their rock bottom is so far from them. But when they hit that rock bottom, I worry for them because one, they can lash out. Two, you see people becoming violent towards the opposite sex. And then three, you have people attacking, at least here in Canada, people in relationships saying that, why do you get this and I don't? How do you think we can prevent or maybe bring back some of these men with the help of the church or without the help of the church to understand, don't go down this path because it's not going to get you the outcome that you want?
Well, let's talk about the two parents in the household. I had the privilege of sitting with a family for our church at a soccer match, and it was a different perspective, different culture, different background of teenage boys. They're dealing with the same thing. The parents are dealing with social media, the friend group, and everything online making its way into the hallways of the classroom. That is literally all we talked about with the kids. We talked about a trip to Disney, but then it got right into the challenges that they're dealing with, which can lead to bullying. So I understand that 100% because if we look back to the 90s, the 80s and the 90s, when we had a problem, we had a telephone, we had our CD player, our cassette player, and we listened to the music that was most connected to the mood we were in. Sometimes I was in an Outcast mood. Sometimes I was in a Tupac mood. Sometimes I was in a mood with LL Cool J. Sometimes I was in a Michael Jackson or Prince or a Luther mood. And so it was all contained, but we still had the family dynamic where after you do that, doors open, we're going out, let's go have dinner, etc., and then let's connect and talk on that. I think that that's our role as parents, and I'm still on the parenting journey as I transition from infants and toddlers into little people that act like me, think like me. Oh God, they do little things, and I'm just like, oh my God, you get that from me, and I got to figure out how to best guide them through this new complicated world with a number of minefields designed to take their mind, their body, their spirit away from them. So that's the first. I think the church can do a much better job of making sure that it is trying to reach individuals with the goal of getting them not just to Christ, but getting men and women into family dynamics. The family dynamic is great because you die for your sons, you kill for your daughters. And if something comes against my house in any way, I am going to fight to keep it. So just imagine a community of men who are that serious and intentional about the protection of their property and their people that God has given them. And the church is supposed to be equipping the men and the women with the skills in order for them to be successful in the role and in the alignment that I spoke of earlier on this call. Um, but as far as getting more tools for the young people, I think that there are a lot of churches that have made the investment in the youth financially and physically and emotionally by appealing to their senses to give them more of an outlet so they can learn about Jesus. At the end of the day, everything that we do, everything that I try to put out here is going to eventually get you back to the road of Jesus. And if it doesn't get you back to the road of Jesus, now you can't say you haven't been exposed to it in a way that you understand, because that's what my call is to do. And so I do it, I enjoy it. And I want men specifically to understand that there's more opportunity, there's more money, there's more cash, there's more connections and relationship and networking than any time in history. Don't look at the news. Don't look at your BuzzFeed. Don't look at your CNN and Fox alerts. They are lying to you. The sensationalization of news has become a sport. Everything feels like ESPN, and this is not a game. This is life. And if you want to be successful in life, find someone who's already successful, who looks like you or doesn't look like you, but connects with you so that you can get the outcome and result that you want.
What do you then think, Glenn, the what do you think the church or even the community or maybe both can do to help these men along in their relationships?
In their relationships, I mean, there are men's groups for that. So every church has a men's ministry. Some of them are non-functioning, so let's just own that. But then there are men's groups that are things that at our church we have something that's called Freedom, and then we have men meeting every Wednesday for about an 8 week period, 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off, 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off. And then that's when we pick a topic, we pick a book, and we use that as a guiding light. So I believe the church has to get serious and intentional about trying to reach men. Too many of our churches changed in the 90s and they only started focusing on women. Why did they start focusing on women? Easy answer. That's where the money was. What happened in the 90s, especially in the Black church? Black women started out earning their husbands or male counterparts by an average of around $5,000. That small group and that small segment is kind of what you hear on social media, where you see a lot of women saying, well, Black women, we're up. Y'all were up because you guys were Black women were educated at a higher level. The men were coming from military service and factory work. And when military service ended, factory work went down, their white collar job was what was sustaining the household while dad found work or husband or boyfriend found work. So the churches realized we can now start asking for more money because the women are now controlling the purse. Women and wives control the household spending anyway. It's just the responsibility of dad, if you're the fiscally responsible one or husband, to provide guidance around that. But women still make the decisions. I don't decide where we're going to vacation. I don't decide what color the couch is going to be. My job is just to say, yes, yes, dear, I like it. Let's go and negotiate with the salesman. But I think that we have to get really intentional about speaking back to men because when the church started making the decision to speak to women to get the tithe and took the man out of it, the church has prospered. And as the church has prospered, it attracted more women. And as the churches attracted more women, the messaging didn't go from man, woman, child. It said, all of us are God's children, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman, whether you're a child. God has a plan for your life, and that plan is to prosper you and not to harm you. So, as women are doing well professionally and their man is not, they look at it as God is prospering them and they leave their man behind. And so Black church has never been able to get out of that. They're never going to be able to get out of that until they acknowledge that point. We made the mistake. We went towards women. That's why you hear Black women specifically at church ask, where are all the Black men? They're not there. They're not going to be there because it's not a place for them. It's a place for you. It's a place for a few men. And it's not a place that men are feeling like they can be connected. As far as the community, I think the community has a responsibility, even going back to our earlier topic, on helping to combat the loneliness. Your community should be a place of connectivity. You should have events and you should have opportunities to connect with, speak to, and see individuals that you would not normally see on a regular basis because it opens up your mind to more possibilities. So I think communities need to get back to the job. We've built too many fences and too many gates in our own lives where we're not willing to connect with anyone else. And then we're wondering why our communities are failing. But I think communities have to get back to being serious about connecting with the people that are in that community.
If black men are not showing up in churches anymore, and if there's separation from the community and its role in the lives of these men, where do you think the men are going to now?
Well, percentage of black men in church, our highest percentage, if I'm looking at the data, 80% of black men were in church around 1960, 1965. Does it correlates with the civil rights movement, correlates with Vietnam, correlates with Roe v. Wade, the birth control. It all starts to see a decline. Now, if I have to be honest, taking out married men who are at the church as black men, 3% are single black men, single heterosexual black men who are willing to be in a relationship with a woman. And I think I'm being generous there because if I'm being honest, the ones that I see are men who are kind of past what we're talking about, who are trying to help with the next generation. They're okay being at the church. I'm fine being at the church because I've been here for 15 years. I know the pastor, I know the deacons, I know everyone. And, it's serving me and my family. Well, you're missing the next generation because the next generation, as soon as they leave high school, they're not coming back to your church because the church is not speaking to the challenges that they are dealing with. But I think specifically because black men are not in church, I'll tell you where they're not, which the data supports. They're not in the street and they're not in prison. So that narrative needs to go away. They are at home. Men ain't even dating anymore. And black men in particular have led that charge. We have black men in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Dallas, and in Houston who have said publicly, I'm done dating. And women who have complained about going to singles events in Atlanta, in Brooklyn, and only one man show up. Why is that? 2005, 2010, black men would have been up in there. Sunday best, Saturday best, looking fresh, car clean, trying to impress because they're tired of the nonsense. They're tired of when they go, if it's at the church, and they believe that they're going to get a traditional woman, they end up with a female or a city girl. They don't go to church for a city girl or a female. They go to church at minimum for a modern woman, traditional woman, or if he's high value status, high value. And then for women that are experiencing this, it fuels what we talked about on the other side of their loneliness. Who's the number one selling female artist right now? Number one.
You're asking me?
Yeah. Right now, who's
Well, if I,
selling out tours? Who's selling out tours? Who's been on tour for 2 years?
if you're talking about overall artists, it has to be Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift. How did Taylor Swift get started? Breakup songs and
Oh
loneliness songs.
yes, oh yes. Every time her relationship ended, she had a single or song coming out or an
I can't
album.
wait for this Travis Kelsey album to come out. That thing gonna be fire. I'm telling you, because it's good. She's writing. Beyonce. When did Beyonce really blow up?
All the
Lemonade.
single ladies.
Then she did Single Ladies, and then she came out with Lemonade because she was talking about single ladies. Put your hands up. She was selling singleness. She was selling loneliness. Then she had Heartache, which I believe was in wrestling. We call that a work. I believe it was a work. That was not real. There's no way. And so, as like neither one of them would jeopardize that industry that way. But anyway, so then she comes out with Lemonade, and then she has another tour. Her husband comes out with an apology album and a tour, and then they go back on tour together, reunited, connected. And we ate it up, and it was $3 billion tours selling loneliness and heartbreak. I didn't realize how popular SZA was. I like SZA. She's on a bunch of my different playlists. But when you listen to her music, oh, I see why she's popular. She's selling music in toxicity. Jasmine Sullivan, toxicity. My girl, her ain't been able to drop an album because she's too positive. She's gonna have to go get in a relationship and start getting toxic because she being too nice on records, talking about love and intimacy and connection. They don't want to hear that. The market doesn't want that. The market wants loneliness for the women by the women to help fuel the loneliness on their side. Which is why the church has to stand up and start being a louder voice. You can have what you want. God has a plan for you. God's original plan for men and women were to be fruitful and multiply. It wasn't to be a boss babe baddie and own your own business and pay your mama's rent. That that's a byproduct, I guess. But if you're not being fruitful and multiplying and being united with the man, what are you doing? It's not for a man to be a baller and spend his money on whatever he wants to spend it on and only deal with women when he feels like it. For him to be fruitful and multiply. You can't be fruitful nor multiply until you get together.
So let me ask you, as we look to close, I want to give you three wishes. I love doing this to end our interview
Three
normally.
wishes, okay?
Three wishes, okay? And then you can use them for things that you wish these people knew. So, three things you wish people knew when it came to being able to find a partner that will grow with them and create the type of relationship that will be successful and long lasting. What are three things you wish people knew on how to do that and why?
Okay. The first thing I wish people would do would start earlier. And let me give you some age gap dating. People ask me my opinion on it, and I'm public with it. I believe in age gap dating. I don't believe in 25, 30, 40 years of age gap. If you're a young lady who's 25 and you meet a man that's 33 to 36, you're going to be in good hands. Your father will be proud of you because I talk about men who go from 18 to 33 investing in themselves in a high value skill for 4 years, perfecting that high value skill for another 4 years, getting a promotion, getting a second promotion. They're now on the trajectory for long term high value modern or traditional status. My 25-year-old daughter meets that guy at homecoming and she brings him back to me for Thanksgiving. I am going to feel better about her dating him because he is better established. He's past the foolishness. He's done the work. And now my message to my daughter is don't mess this up. Start earlier and make a deal with someone who is going up. That's the first thing. That's my first wish. Second wish is I wish people would stop using money as an excuse as to why they cannot date and get a great dating outcome. Dates don't cost much. I know I've done the list reaction video where coffee dates aren't real, to the park isn't real, doing a picnic isn't real, coming to your house and watching a movie isn't real. But those were the things we did in high school and college because we didn't have no money and we stayed dating. Our generation was the generation of teen pregnancy, is what I always say, because everybody was trying to get with somebody. Now these people don't even want to, they can't stand each other. The boys don't want to be with the girls don't want to be with the boys, but it goes back to money. You don't need money to impress a guy. You don't need money to impress a girl. You don't need money to make yourself more beautiful. You are attractive enough at whatever age you are to get the outcome that you deserve. There's somebody for everybody, and sometimes there's two people. So figure it out. So, and the third thing that I would like people, and I wish everyone knew, if you are struggling and if you can't seem to figure this out, find somebody who knows Jesus and just talk to them. Ask them a couple of questions. Figure out how they got to this point in their life and what God has done in their life and then start making some decisions to either move closer to them or stay away. Well, at least you now have more information than you had 5 minutes ago.